We've now reached another part of our service, the martyrology service. And the custom at Beth Yeshurun and many congregations throughout the United States is to have a survivor or a second-generation survivor speak about the experience their family members endured during the Holocaust. This afternoon, it's my pleasure to call upon my friend, Dr. Eric Haas. Dr. Haas is a longtime Beth Yeshurun congregant. He was born in New York, raised in New Orleans, and now lives here in Houston with his wife, Courtney, and his 5 children. All 5 attended or are currently attending our day school. Eric is a colon surgeon and serves as the chief of the division of colon and rectal surgery at the Houston Methodist Hospital. Eric's father, George Haas, was born in Vienna, Austria in 1931 and is a Holocaust survivor. He passed away last year, the day after Rosh Hashanah. It's now my pleasure to call upon our member and my friend and our friend, Dr. Eric Haas.
Thank you, Rabbi. My father, George Haas, was born in Vienna in 1931. He had a sister, Henrietta. She was 2 years old. She was 2 years older. His family, they lived the good times. They were very successful. In fact, his father had a store. They made trimmings for tailors. On his mother's side of the family, they had a jewelry store right on the main street in Vienna. Austria, before the Germany invasion, was as democratic a country as the United States. There was some anti-Semitism, yes, my dad remembered, but it was mostly in the countryside. It was not in the city. It was not in Vienna. In 1938, my dad, now 7, his sister 9, they were sitting at the dinner table. His parents loved to listen to classical music, especially on Friday nights. But on this Friday night, there was an interruption in the broadcast. The commentator announced the German army had marched into Austria, had taken over the government. My dad remembers there was a lot of concern on his parents' face. Didn't quite understand what it meant. But it didn't take long to find out. The Austrians welcomed Hitler and his German troops with open arms. There was a big parade. His parents were able to watch it from that jewelry store on the main thoroughfare. People came by the thousands. They were shocked. They didn't know the Austrians would receive the Germans like this. They were waving the flags on ladders, just cheering the Fuhrer. His parents, they were not prepared for the shocking incidents that would soon occur. To them, anti-Semitism in Germany was really not so bad. It was subtle. The German Jews, they thought, had learned to accommodate themselves, and eventually it would improve. In fact, just a few months earlier, in the summer, before the invasion, they were vacationing, and they met a Jewish family from Germany. They had asked, how are things going in Germany? How is the anti-Semitism? And the family said, it's not so bad. Yes, there's unpleasantness, but we still own a business, we're able to travel, we're able to come and go, and we have no reason to leave Germany. So when the Germans marched into Austria, my dad's family was shocked. They were ill-prepared for the changes that would occur so quickly. The latent anti-Semitism of so many Austrians around them came right up to the open. The Austrian people, they went wild. My dad recalled several stories. One day, his cousin and mother were just riding on the trolley, the only really way for transportation back then. At a random neighborhood, the conductor stopped and said, all Jews get off. They were just made to get off the trolley. No one would help them. All night it took for them to find their way home to their neighborhood. My dad recalled one day in his parents' jewelry shop, his aunt was taken. They put a sign on her that said, I'm a Jewish pig, and they just paraded her up and down the streets in total humiliation. All of a sudden, the playgrounds my father went to, the parks, the pools, they had signs, no Jewish children allowed. He heard kids would say, he's Jewish, don't play with him, she's Jewish, don't play with her. The word Jew, it became a dirty word. They then had to go to segregated schools. Also, his parents' businesses. There was a commissaire who was assigned to their businesses. The businesses would be open, they could do business, but the books were taken away from them. The bank accounts were suddenly frozen. Travel. that became immediately restricted. No one was prepared for that. In the streets, when the parents would see their friends or neighbors, the only topic of conversation was, are you going to get out? How are you going to get out? Tell me what you've learned. My dad's family sat by the radio every evening, but now instead of listening to classical music, they were glued to the news, anxiously hearing that hopefully things would not worsen, but that wasn't the case. On November 9th of 1938, they were sitting around listening to the radio when the news came out that in Paris, a Jewish student had shot and killed a German diplomat. The Germans and the Austrians, they were enraged. My dad's parents were frightened. The next day, my dad went to school, and at about 11 o'clock, a mother came and took one of his classmates home. Soon after, another child was taken home, and another child was taken home, and all of a sudden, my dad was there alone. The class was empty, the school was empty. He was waiting for his father to pick him up. As he was waiting, 3 kids, maybe a year or two older than him, started heckling him, started calling him Jewish, started pushing him, bullying him, and then started hitting him. He was 7 years old. All of a sudden, thank goodness, his father came and got him, but he let those 3 kids go. My father always told the story, he never understood for years why his father would let these 3 kids go. He didn't reprimand them, he didn't say anything to them. He just let him beat up his son and leave. Well, the truth is that earlier that day, my dad's father was warned by customers that the German stormtroopers were going store to store and now taking the men to concentration camps. His dad and 5 of his Jewish employees hid in the basement. They hid in the cellar, but the Gestapo found them. His father, seeing the Gestapo coming for them, actually got a wave of adrenaline and started shouting at the German troops. He said, "Who are you? Why are you here? I fought in the German army. You cannot do this to us." And he actually surprised these German troops so much that the officer let him go, and the other 5. It was kind of a miracle. His father thought he'd be shot, but he knew no other way, but he was not going to go to the concentration camp that day. That's when he went to pick up my father at school, and that's why he was late. That day, November 10th, 1938, is known as Kristallnacht, and that was my father's experience for that day. From then on, things have dramatically changed. The school was closed, the business is now completely taken over, and many Jewish families were evicted from their apartments for SS troops. Now, there's a good ending to the story because my dad's uncle, Eric, who I'm named after, he had gotten out a few months before the invasion. He got a visa to England. And my dad's father was able to get a visitor's visa. He had been working on that. He said he needed to visit his sick brother in England, and he was granted a visa. He had a choice. He knew at that time all the men were taken to concentration camps. The women and children were not. He chose to leave his family because the only way he knew to get them out was to first get himself out. He in fact did just that. He got to England. Day and night he worked. He found a distant relative in New York, somehow got the papers, the affidavit, and another miracle, a visa was granted to my father, his sister, and his mother. In January of 1939, they went to Hamburg, boarded a ship, and sailed to the United States of America. 2 weeks later, my father reunited with his father, and their family was together. They, of course, left many loved ones, many family members who perished, but they were one of the few lucky ones to get out. Now, as Rabbi Strauss said, my father, he passed away 1 year ago, the day after Rosh Hashanah, at the young age of 90. Now, during his childhood in Austria, he grew up very secular, didn't really know what the religion was. But as he developed into a young man, when he moved to America, he became more and more connected. He wondered, what is it about this religion why Hitler wanted to annihilate us? In 1959, 20 years after he fled Austria, he married my mother. They settled in New Orleans. They raised 4 children. Now, although New Orleans did not really have a thriving Jewish community, he found a way to bring the religion to us in the home. We kept kosher. He never kept kosher before. He took us to Shabbat services. There was not a Friday night without a family or two over for Shabbat dinner. and somehow, with very modest means, found a way to send all 4 children to a Jewish day school, much like Beth Yeshurun. His mission, in his own way, was to defeat Hitler for years to come by absorbing Judaism into his life, spreading it and growing it through his children, and ultimately his grandchildren, for which he was proud to have 15. L'Ador Vador, that was his favorite and most meaningful prayer at services. I remember he would always bellow that out he was overcome with emotions because he was lucky to be able to live that tradition of L'Ador Vador. And in his 80s, he took to social media to spread his message. In the New Orleans community, anytime there was an announcing of a Brit Milah or baby naming, George Haas would famously post 3 words: keep them coming. Gamar Chatima Tova.
Well, Yasher Koach to Dr. Haas for a beautiful retelling of his father's story and how precarious life really is when we hear something like that, how blessed we all are to be here now.